Joe, the matchup that I predicted in the beginning of this. No, I'm just joking.
Get out of here.
The Big Ten title game is finally among us, and maybe one of the two teams we expected to be here, Joe, in the beginning of the season. But Oregon versus Penn State in the Big Ten title game. Joe, how do you see this one playing out?
So, first of all, Oregon Duck fans, I am a big supporter of yours. I am picking you to win this football game, but I think that this game is going to be a lot closer than a lot of people anticipate because there are a few minor deficiencies within this Oregon team. We've talked a little bit about their inconsistencies with their run game, or their run defense, rather. I think a couple of those areas are enough for Penn State to get things going on the ground with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton to keep this thing close, to bleed a little bit of clock, to keep Oregon's offense off the field. However, I really think that Mateo Uiagalelei and Derek Harmon and that front going up against a good Penn State offensive line, they're gonna have another one of those big games. Like I think that if Oregon wins this ball game, they're going to win it off of the backs of their defensive line that have been so freaking productive and so disruptive recently. And also, more importantly, the biggest part of the reason why I really like Oregon in this matchup, Blake, their offensive line has been super reliable since the beginning of the year when we were questioning if they were ready to go. They have clicked together. Johnny Cornelius, former Rhodey Ram, Josh Connerly have been the bookends, and the interior group has improved. I lean Oregon here because we have been able to rely on them being steady on offense and being one of the most balanced, if not the most balanced team in college football.
Joe, these are, from a statistical analysis standpoint, both of these teams are pretty even, right? Yeah. I mean, both are in the top 10 or top 15 in a lot of categories. Joe, I'm just going to lean on what I've been saying about Oregon all year. You got on to me about a month ago about saying that defensive line and front seven was leaking in the run game. I think that you're about to face the best run game that outside of Ashton Genty that you've seen all year in Boise State. I don't think it's remotely close. And Ohio State cannot line up and run the ball on you. They haven't been able to all year and run on you the way that effectively that they needed to. I think that Penn State can. Now, the caveat of that is that Ohio State had Megatron Sr. and Megatron Jr. at wideout. Penn State doesn't have that, okay? It's not it's not even in the same talking point. But they do have a Tyler Warren. And it's going to be interesting to see how Andy Kotelnicki in a championship game is able to scheme up and maneuver some things here with the personnel. But, Joe, I just don't know if I can pick Penn State here. I don't, because when I look at Oregon, I feel like I trust Dylan Gabriel more. I feel like I trust that offensive line more. I feel like I trust that running back or that the running game principle more, not running backs. I trust the wide receivers more. I trust the D-line more at Oregon, the linebacking core, the safeties, the corners. And I kind of trust the coaching staff a little bit more. Now, it's interesting because both of these coaches have been in situations where everybody keeps saying, other than Dan Lanning this year, that neither one of these coaches have been able to get over the hump. Well, one of them's got to. I just think that it's going to come down to which quarterback does Blake Ruffino trust the most. And the one that I trust the most is Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
So many things are even. I look, and I've told you this before, I look at quarterback and head coach. Even if head coach is a wash, which maybe it is, I just think Dylan Gabriel is going to make more plays than – and look, James Franklin's won a lot of games. I think it's unfair for me to say that it's a wash. But I feel like that if the game's on the line, that Dylan Gabriel can make the play that Drew Allard might not be able to. So I think that they're even in a lot of different spots. I think they're even in a lot of different ways. Look, man, in Penn State, for what it's worth, they're a yard away from being undefeated. A yard away. And people want to poo-poo on Ohio State because they lost to Michigan. They're still a good football team. But I got to go with Dylan Gabriel, man, here. I've gone with him a lot this year. I think he's the catalyst, Joe. I think he's been in these situations before, and I think he's going to propel them into a victory here.
So you brought up the Ohio State game, and I think that I'm not using common opponents to build my argument, but the fact that we saw Penn State would hurt them, inability to finish drives, inability to record splash plays from your receivers, I don't think that suits you very well in a matchup like this. And look, there's a lot of statistics that they're very evenly matched if we're just talking like general EPA and how they square off. Like they're both in the top 20 in most categories, offense and defense. But from just the film perspective and in what we've seen, if this game does come down to, and it's close like we're talking about, 2 minutes to go, just like the Ohio State game, there's not much time left on the clock. Each team gets a drive. Dylan Gabriel goes down, puts points on the board. Drew Aller, I can't say the same thing. Drew Aller, unlike Will Howard, Will Howard had unbelievable receivers to turn to. Who the heck? You can't orchestrate a 2-minute drive with Tyler Warren and Nick Singleton solely. You got to be able to find some receivers.
Joe,
you got to be able to do something there.
You better not doubt Tyler Warren.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm a big Tyler Warren fan. He's one of my top tight ends.
He's the best tight end in college football.
Yeah, but if you need to put up 75 yards to go on a drive, you're not going to throw the ball every single time.
I throw it to him every play.
That's not getting you. Well, then you're losing the football game. You're not going to get down the field quick enough.
What's the difference of me throwing it to Tyler Warren every play than me throwing it to Gronk every play if I'm Tom Brady?
Okay, if you're trying to orchestrate a drive and everybody knows
saw the greatest quarterback of all time do it to a tight end. Don't say
Allen's not Tom Brady.
Okay, I get it.
NFL.
You said that you can't do it with a tight end. Your premise.
I'm being
you can't do it with a tight end.
I'm being a little cut and dry with that. But what I'm trying to say here is that like you're. In a particular drive, you got to be able to find your receivers on the outside. You got to be able to pick up a 20-yard gain.
Well,
you can't just keep hitting Tyler Warren.
Well, what worries me if I'm Penn State, the best team that you play clearly was Ohio State here. And Oregon fans, you need to listen. Drew, the leading rusher for Penn State against Ohio State was Tyler Warren, the tight end, 3 carries, 47 yards. Drew Aller was the second leading rushing guy with 10 carries and 31 yards. They did not and could not and would not run the football. They couldn't. So there comes a part where they've run the ball on everybody in the country besides Ohio State. And if I'm Oregon, I'm just sitting there saying like, hey, man, we've been a little leaky. But, Joe, Penn State's got to prove that they can line up and run the football in Oregon. They do. You can't have a tight end.
They should be able to.
I mean, Joe, we're talking about a tight end and a statue at quarterback that were the leading rushers against Ohio State.
I wouldn't call Drew Aller a statue. He's a pretty good athlete.
Hold on one second, Joe. Hey, Meemaw. My Meemaw's running past me. She's beating Drew Aller in a race.
Stop. He's a phenomenon. He's a very good athlete. Don't go down this.
But you know what I'm trying to say.
I know. You
okay.
Okay.
I mean, Drew Aller's not going to beat you with his wheels. Man, listen, I don't know if Penn State's ready for this. I don't.
Well, so that's the biggest part is like, if I'm picking between these two coaches, this is the last part for me. Between these two coaches, Dan Lanning's got the momentum. He got over the hump beating Ohio State. James Franklin still can't do it.
I mean, he has won the conference before. We got to
Did they beat Wisconsin, though? They didn't beat like a real Big Ten
But they beat
team.
Ohio State to get there.
They did, but that was the one time that he's beaten them.
Dan Lanning's never won a conference. Don't act like that James has never won a conference. Don't do that to Franklin. Like
one's much younger and is an up and comer. The other has given us failures plenty of times.
Sounds good, but I get what you're saying. But let's not act like James Franklin hasn't. I mean, Joe, that experience may lead him into a win here. Hold on. Let's not act like that Dan Lanning didn't have some very questionable calls against Ohio State. We don't point him out because of the win against Ohio State, and he did last year too. I mean, like, there are some question marks on both.
There are question marks, but I mean, if I pick someone to trust,
I'm with you. I'm going to take Dan Lanning too.
Yeah.
All right.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.